Tyler1, the legendary player who has hit Challenger in all 5 roles, has now moved on to an even bigger goal, trying to create the meta himself. It all started on a normal afternoon Twitch stream, with someone on his team being paid to lose the game. It was a day like any other in North American Challenger. Assuming the worst, he queued up for another game, expecting for more cash to exchange hands and for him to be the victim of it. So instead of tryharding and locking in Pike, he decided to try a new pick that he once saw in the depths of Diamond, Urgot Support. After a promising first game, he actually started to play more and more, changing the build, the runes, and developing the playstyle to something that actually seems to work. So is this pick good, or is he just griefing? But first, let me tell you about our amazing sponsor, who is the reason we can make videos like this. They're a brand that loves League of Legends, supporting esports by also sponsoring Cloud9. It is blockchain.com. Whether you already use crypto or have just heard of it, blockchain.com is perfect, because it's one of the biggest crypto services, having over 81 million wallets working in over 200 countries. They have their wallet, the easiest and most powerful crypto wallet you can get, letting you buy a ton of different cryptocurrencies using both fiat currency like dollars, euros and pounds in the US, EU or UK, or even with other cryptocurrencies, because it's very simple to move funds to blockchain from another site. This means it's also easy to move funds off blockchain.com if you end up disliking it. You're totally in control, even having 24/7 live chat support, in case you ever need it. If you're new to crypto, blockchain.com has a learning portal to teach you about all the different types of cryptocurrencies. If you're already an expert, then why not use blockchain.com's exchange? I've been using blockchain personally to test it out. Use the link in the description to sign up, and also get 0 fees on your first trade as a bonus. Back to Urgot. This pick seems really troll. A top lane champion with a really expensive build and a low range being taken into bot lane, but there actually are some benefits of Urgot support. He has a really good CC with his flip that sets up kills every time it lands. He has pretty great damage thanks to his W, and especially thanks to the power of the execute on his ultimate. And he can even go assassin with a lethality build, or have the option to go full tank with an Aftershock build. So in theory, it could work. But is Tyler1 griefing by picking it? Yes, 100%. He's played hundreds of games of Urgot top, and this is how he plays a fight on support? I think we all know who the real win trader is. Ulting LeBlanc clone? Okay buddy, make it a bit less obvious. But that doesn't mean Urgot support is bad. In fact, Tyler1 has stumbled onto a pick that does actually work. I interviewed a Master Urgot one trick. This is Urpog, who's actually an expert at this style, playing Urgot support even in high elo. We're going to compare how him and Tyler play, to see which one is better. Tyler1's Urgot is the Predator style. Taking this rune locks you into doing one strategy. You have extra mobility, which makes landing your E a bit easier, you have more roaming, and you have good team fights, where you can use the speed to lock onto your target and burst them down with your ult. But this style also has absolutely no pressure in lane. You pick Predator Urgot when you know that your AD carry sucks. I'd like to apologise to Tyler's teammates. In lane, Tyler is forced to do absolutely nothing at level 1. He's shorter range than all of the enemies, so cannot trade, and his combo isn't ready yet, so he just has to wait. Ideally, taking Predator, you want the wave to push into you, so then at level 2 or level 3, you can go for a flash flip combo under tower, quickly grabbing the enemy before they can react, and throwing them into your tower, bursting them down and igniting before they can flash away to safety. This is the classic combo for Urgot top lane, and it's really good bot lane against all the squishy champions. It's so good you should be looking to do it every game. So far, pretty perfect from Tyler, but there are 2 other rune pages that are much better for Urgot in lane. Urpog's Press the Attack page makes your level 2 power spike much bigger. He saves the support item's execute stacks for the second wave to instantly kill the minions for a surprise level 2, rushing forwards at enemies with an E into W kill combo, having some huge burst damage himself. Press the Attack is great at enabling all damage from you and your teammates, and it's really easy for Urgot to proc it. Aftershock is the other option, making you more of a tanky frontliner in fights, and letting you take bigger risks early on without risking losing lane. After you go for this early kill, your goal should be to shove the wave and base, because Predator Urgot can buy boots and start to roam, with the other styles building towards Kindle Gem, so you can fight more in bot lane. With any of the builds, you should always try this flash combo early on, because by the time you get level 6, as long as you've done a couple roams, your flash should then be back up again to do another flash E play, but this time you also have your execute on your ult, which of course cannot miss as long as you land your E and fire it during the CC duration. From here on, your ult is your biggest tool, since the execute is always at 25% of the enemy's health. Whether you're ahead or behind, you'll always have a use throughout the game, mostly as a pick tool. Tyler1 with his Predator build has no problem rushing into lanes and sticking on top of enemies even when they use dashes, saving his E for the perfect moment and executing with ult. Predator does exactly what Urgot needs in this situation, turning him from a slow crab into what is basically Hecarim. With all this speed you can run circles around enemies and get all of your leg damage off. Enemies have no boots since it's so early on, and if they try to escape, your ult is there to pull them back in. Ideally, you always want to go for the reliable E into ultimate play to make sure you don't miss. If you don't do this and instead just go for ults, then it's one of the hardest abilities in the game to snipe with due to the cast time. The best way that Urpog has to land it is to wait for the enemy to do something predictable before he fires. Maybe they start walking in one direction in a straight line, or they stop for a couple of seconds. That's your main chance to get a snipe off. Of course for Tyler1 this isn't a problem. Even hitting invisible champions at long range, this was a pretty nutty play. I guess all you need is hundreds of games. With the Predator build, your mid game is pretty great. You can make plays yourself, running in to land your E and set up kills. Tyler1 is even doing a lethality build, so he starts to get quite a lot of damage in mid game, surprising and bursting enemies down by himself. But if you're in a fight with lots of people, Urgot is not usually the one who should engage. He's super good at following up on an engage, flipping carries that are CC'd into your team and bursting them down, or ulting CC'd targets to make sure the kill is secured. Whatever your build is on Urgot, it's not going to be cheap. So stealing these kills isn't actually that bad. You can use the gold well, unlike some supports like enchanters who have much cheaper items and don't want to be the ones getting kills. Here is where the builds start to do different things. Tyler1's build is lethality. This is a build that I love and even made a video about, showing a Korean Master Urgot player who plays top, buying Prowler's Claw and going for one-shots. Prowler's Claw gives you the extra mobility that Urgot is missing to gap close on top of enemies and burst them with your newfound damage. This build is the most risky and most unreliable that exists for Urgot, but it is incredibly fun and can let you kill a whole team. So if you're a for fun player like Tyler1, it's perfect. A much more reliable build for Urgot support is Locket. With the Locket shield and the shield on his E, you're deceptively tanky in early fights. And the shield for teammates shouldn't be underrated. This item is one of the only true support items left in the game, and it's great for baiting enemies into overextensions as well as saving your teammates. Then building into Black Cleaver to shred the enemy's armor, this helps out your team's damage with every hit. It's very efficient on Urgot thanks to his W attack speed, and amplifies what your team can do in fights, while you act as a frontliner. In teamfights, Urgot's ultimate becomes your main win condition. Firstly for the AoE fear. If you get an execute off and stay in range of enemies, your huge AoE fear buys so much time for your team to DPS and win the fight. But also, the ult is great for shutting down a fed enemy carry, even if the enemy team has a super fed Hecarim with 15,000 gold. A low income Urgot support can still ult him to execute at 25% HP before he can get a shield and heal back up. This shuts down the enemy's most important champion and can turn the game around for Urgot's team. Your ult is so important unless you're going to get thousands of gold worth of value from it. It's usually better not to use it. Similar to how Orianna without her ultimate is nowhere near as useful. This is your main contribution tool, and the cooldown is quite long. But say your team makes a terrible play, Urgot can sometimes salvage the play himself, in this case using ult to trade back a kill and make it not so terrible. This can be really useful the later the game goes on, because people will make mistakes every game, regardless of what elo you're in, so how you react to them is what matters. Whatever build you're doing, either way you have another role in fights, which is peeling for your carries. Using E at the perfect time to avoid CC and interrupt an enemy's play is incredibly OP. Look at how Tyler plays this fight. So much happens all at once. He assassinates the enemy Swain before he can use his big ultimate burst damage, stopping Urgot's team from getting wiped. Then even being able to buffer his E through the Renekton stun to guarantee he gets flipped into his death while Urgot gets out of danger. You have the tools to do a lot in fights. Whenever an enemy dives your team, you're tanky enough to go on them and use E to flip them off your carries. It's honestly way better peel than most supports can do, too. Even a meta support like Leona much prefers to engage than to sit on her carries. The Predator build has the easiest time doing their job, one of the only builds that can get into the enemy team and cause chaos with your E and your ultimate fear. The reason to do this build is if you want to be the carry. The other builds are all about enabling your team, with the press the attack build setting up your team's damage. It's great with bruisers as they already have the tankiness and you provide them with the extra burst. This, as well as the Aftershock build, unfortunately are mostly about going in, doing your job and then dying for your team. If you go in, use E and ult well, then die, then that's an ideal fight most of the time. You don't have all the resources of a top lane Urgot, and so you aren't quite tanky enough to escape. Your champion is immobile and any of your mobility you have you'll mostly be using to go in. To finish off the builds, they go in a similar direction. Titanic Hydra is great for Urgot, with Tyler going for magic resist boots, but Urpog instead recommending cooldown boots for more ultimates, since this ability has such high value, getting Wardstone last item. Here are all of the rune page options, from the playmaking Predator, to the DPSing press the attack, to the frontlining Aftershock. Tyler1 has actually been testing these new runes out as well, so maybe he's finally taking some inspiration from Urpog. Late game, thanks to these builds, you basically play like a normal Urgot. You're a bruiser who can tank damage, block for your team, stop engages and set up kills. Your peak power is much higher than a normal support if you can reach it, and your damage is actually really good later on. So who's better at this pick, Tyler or Urpog? Right now it's the one who started playing it a lot earlier. He's played hundreds of games of it and put the hours in. It's Urpog, but Tyler is a better player overall, so he should take the crown soon if he keeps it up. But I think we all know the next time he gets win traded, he's got a new troll pick to test out. So how good is Urgot support really? Well, it's definitely better than Tyler's support Aatrox. I don't know about these KDAs, but I might actually need to try and find a good way to make this work. Let me know if you want to see that. Since this build can be so varied with all of the rune options, you have a huge amount of adaptability for whatever game you're in. Sometimes you get the privilege of laning against a melee support and can absolutely dominate them with Aftershock or PTA. Sometimes you lane against an enchanter and can never reach them, so Predator can save you from falling asleep. The execute on ult is the main power of this pick. You lose almost no power on this ability compared to playing top lane. You still have the percentage health execute, and if you hit it, enemies are slowed so much, becoming a resource for Urgot to pull in when he wants to get the fear. His E, if you can land it, is also super strong, and as a support, the CC is still as powerful, also being used to dodge CC. But there are some problems with this style. It's low range, so if enemies pick a high range mid or support like Lux, you'll struggle to get through their CC and reach anyone. With the lethality build, you can end up missing an engage, and will always die if you do. That's why the more tanky builds are a bit more reliable. And worst of all, if you're behind, whatever matchup you're in, your champion does not have the tools to come back alone. You're forced to rely on your teammates to set up engages, while he follows up and hopes for the best. So my rating for this pick is a 6 out of 10. With the right runes, it's got great laning and early game that can win you a game by itself in solo queue. Thanks again to our sponsor, as well as everyone's favourite 6'5" streamer. Links to them and Urpog's Twitch channel are all in the description.